So, Paul, I've been away for a couple days doing
Yep.
chaos because we're launching Start 11 V2 today.
Hmm.
However, I knew we were good friends, but this just kind of further solidified that fact. So I was
Okay.
reading the Satya Nadella interview
Hmm.
where he talked about all these things. And we've all seen the headlines. Windows Phone
Hmm.
was my biggest mistake. Those
Yep.
are the headlines.
Yep.
And I read the whole thing and I read his actual, like, what he
Hmm.
said.
Yep.
And I was like, as soon as I finished reading that paragraph, because it's not long, I was like, Paul found this. Paul has a
Yep.
post about it. I guarantee it, saying that that's not what he said. And I wake
Yep.
up this morning and I go to the site, and what is there? There's a post from Paul Thurrott saying that's not what he said.
Here's what's interesting about that. When I saw that, two thoughts went through my mind. One was that his two predecessors both said basically the
Yeah,
same thing, right? Although they really did say it was their biggest regret. And I was like, no, that's not that your biggest regret. You're both horrible people. You have way bigger regrets than this. Um, So originally, I was going to mimic my Bill Gates article about this topic and call this "No, Satya, no." And then I read what he wrote, and I said, "Oh, this is a completely different story here." Um, here's this is a tough one for me because what do I compare this to? Like I would say to you, like there are no bigger Star Wars fans in the world than me, but also I don't dress up as a Jedi Knight and go running around with a fake lightsaber. Like I'm not that exuberant about it. Um, I'm also a little maybe more adult about it. I don't know.
hmm
And so on the same vein, I would say there was no bigger Windows Phone fan than I, but I'm also not carrying the torch 10 years later and bitching and moaning every day about Windows Phone is still better. Like this is so stupidity
yeah.
out there. And unfortunately, all those cockroaches have come out of the woodwork. And it's like, see, I told you so. And it's like, yeah, hold on there, righteous indignation. That's not what he said. And anyway, I wrote what I wrote, so you can read it. But what he he gave two answers before he got to phone. He never said Windows Phone, by the way, which I find to be hilarious. And then the way he worded it was like, well, what most people would say is, or what many people
hmm
would say. And it's like it's not his biggest regret. Sorry. His biggest regret is going to be people like Alex Kipman, you know? No, he said personnel. He
Yeah, no,
literally
he did.
said,
He absolutely did
I
say
think
people.
that's what he meant.
Yeah,
Possibly Panos Panay, right?
yeah.
People that were, I think, toxic to the culture there and didn't deliver on the promises. So sorry guys. First of all, Windows Phone stopped being better than Android or iPhone several years ago. Please stop. I still have people who say things like, I could still take better pictures from my Lumia 1020. No, you can't. Stop. You can't. That was a revelation in 2013. It was bypassed in 2015 or 2016. Stop. Just stop. And I just don't understand. So much fake news in the world, and seriously, you're going to start generating it about something as dumb as this.
Well,
And by
here's
by the way, read the interview too.
yeah.
There's a lot of interest.
Oh,
He
there's a
goes
lot of
on
good
and on
stuff in there.
about cricket and nonsense that nobody cares about, but there's it broaches a wide range of topics, including some relevant stuff to us.
hmm
How he compares to Steve Ballmer and blah blah blah, whatever. So I think there's some interesting things there. That was not one of them.
So the biggest compliment of basically what you said, or that you know,
Hmm.
the real obvious thing is like Microsoft. Don't you wish you had a mobile phone platform that was doing billions of dollars? Obviously,
Yeah,
literally
so
everybody would want
everyone
that.
does. Yeah, no, of course. Yep.
Here's the counter side to that. It doesn't matter. Microsoft last quarter reported revenue of $56.5
Right.
billion for the quarter, and they made a net income of $22.3
I know.
billion.
Which is like a crazy almost 50%
Microsoft
margin
is
there.
growing
Um,
significantly in a more
yeah.
I don't want to say sustainable, because you could look at the iPhone and say, like, look, this thing is just a cash cow. It's
Hmm.
repetitious. That's whatever.
Sure.
But they are much more profitable in a market and demographic that they know and they can deal with, rather than hardware.
What would a distant number three in the phone market do to impact Microsoft's earnings? How would you compare that to Activision Blizzard?
So I've got some.
You
I've
know,
got a. You know who we should ask? We should ask LG or HTC
right?
or
Yeah,
BlackBerry
those
or
powerhouses that you know whose revenues we follow closely every quarter.
Yeah, it wouldn't like it wouldn't. Let's pretend that it added. Now Microsoft would love another $1 billion in revenue. Let's pretend that it did. Okay.
So I look. I mean, two things. The trajectory that happened, if he had not killed Windows Phone,
Mm-hmm.
would have harmed Windows further, and wouldn't have
Yeah.
mattered at all in the mobile space. The time to have done this, the time to have made the right decisions predates him. It was 2009, 2010, when they were planning Windows 8 and Windows Phone separately, two different teams. And Sinofsky and those group of Batman villains decided we were going to do something like Windows Phone, but not compatible with Windows Phone. The time to do the one Windows thing was not Windows 10, it was Windows 8. That platform where you have that, those versions of Office that work on a phone and also work on a PC. You remember we were doing that for about 10 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
That would have had a chance. I'm not saying that would have won or succeeded, but that was when it could have happened. Windows 10 was not that time, and it wasn't, obviously, historically. It was too late. And I do feel very strongly that Microsoft can contribute on mobile, and that could include devices like the Duo that run on Android. That there's this notion of a Microsoft 365 device. It could be a Surface tablet. It could be a phone-like thing with a folding screen, ideally, not a two-screen thing. But there's ideas there. But like a standalone phone, like Windows Phone as a standalone alternative to Android and iOS. Guys, I'm sorry. Could we stop pretending? It really irks me when people get too emotional over things that were obviously failures and pretending otherwise. And it's just you're not. What service are you providing? You're gonna get together with another group of whiners and cry over something that was never going to happen anyway. It's stupid. It's not productive. This part of enthusiasm bothers me so much. It's just so wrongheaded.
The other fun thing to come out of the earnings, by the way, which if you're in a vacuum, you look at this and everybody knows why, but Microsoft's all of a sudden real bullish on Xbox gaming growth or revenue growth from their gaming sector. Well, they spent $70 billion, so
Well, yeah. I mean, a couple things to that point. I do the little analysis of their earnings every quarter. I only really look at the consumer stuff for the most part, but mostly more personal computing and then a little bit of Office, and lately AI too. And of course, you have to look at Activision, how that impacts things. Over the summer, July sometime, I think, I wrote an article like, "What if Microsoft had owned Activision for the past 12 months? How would that have impacted the business?" Right? From a revenue perspective, compared to like just Microsoft, not much, right? But more personal computing, we're looking at, I think it was an almost 13% bump in revenues per quarter. It's about $2 billion in revenues, average. It's a significant difference. The thing that's funny is Microsoft comes out and says, these are how we think our business units are going to do next quarter. And when you compare it to the year ago, it's +1 Activision. It's literally the percent difference and the dollar difference is literally the exact thing I just said. It's now Windows, Surface, Xbox, otherwise are going to do what they do too. So that's not completely fair. But the other thing, Brad, and this I think would be particularly interesting to you, is they talked about how successful Starfield was on and how that success transferred to Xbox Game Pass.
Yep.
Could Call of Duty do that next year?
This is
right?
This is the question. This is the big question.
I know.
I think we could all agree at some point they will do this. At some point, probably. Yep. But I suspect it's not going to be. There's so many. Actually, here's probably what's happening, and maybe it's already happened. I guarantee Microsoft has looked at the player base of Starfield, and extrapolated out how much growth they saw in Game Pass. They'll take those numbers, they'll look at the Call of Duty install base on Xbox and try to extrapolate it out. And they'll do a risk analysis and say, if we put this in there, not this year, but next year, we would expect this growth. Is that growth worthwhile to do on day and date with Game Pass? That is the math and financial analysis that's going on right now.
I don't want to say this like it's a goal, because I really don't believe that it is. But also you have to look at, and this is a tough thing to predict, but what does it look like if some percentage of people on a PlayStation, because there are people who own both consoles probably, or maybe would even switch to an Xbox to do the Game Pass thing because of this, right?
Yeah.
How does that impact things too? Because now you're going to be losing those PlayStation sales, but gaining Xbox subscriptions for some amount of time, or maybe forever. Who knows? These are tough. These are very inaccurate predictions. So it's very hard to.
Sure.
I mean, they must have some idea. They must have some ideas as well.
Oh,
right?
they absolutely. They have a ton. They pay a lot of people to do financial modeling for this stuff. And the question is which model is it going to follow? Like what range of adoption are people going to move over? You
have to be careful. Yeah.
This is the stuff that I love. Like I try to figure that number out.
I think the performance of the current Call of Duty game this year is going to factor into this as well, because there's a pretty good chance it's not going to do as well as previous games. And if Call of Duty is on kind of a downward trajectory, where does the line cross where pushing it to Game Pass immediately does make sense financially, right? Or what if we create a blockbuster hit? I don't know how they do that now. I mean, they've exhausted the Modern Warfare thing.
Right.
I don't know where
really
you go.
Wrung it out. Like after this release, it's like, okay.
And you might be able to lump Black Ops into that as well. But there have been, 4, 5? How many Black Ops? 5, I guess, because Cold War was 5. I mean, so we've got like 6 Modern Warfare games, 5 Black Ops games. And I think those are kind of in the same area, right? No one's going to care if you do World War II again. You can't do that. The attempts to start new franchises or new, whatever you want to call them, mini franchises, series, Ghosts, Infinite War, Advanced Warfare, whatever, none of those went anywhere. What do you do? And this is also the challenge for Microsoft, right? So I don't have any answers. I just have questions, but it's fascinating, right? I don't know. I would like to see him do the online thing, right? That massive, like a giant server in the sky with every map, every gun loadout, every perk,
Call of Duty
whatever.
subscription.
Yep. Oh God, that's what I've always wanted. Maybe this is the time. And where do you tie that? And that would tie to Xbox Game Pass very nicely, I think.
I don't know. They've got options. They're smart people, and I'm sure they had something. I mean, obviously, you're not the first person to think of that, but they also, again, those analysts are like, look, if we do that, we're giving up this $1 billion November we get every year.
Yep.
So how do we get that $1 billion elsewhere?
I mean, we'll see. It's going to be very interesting.
Yep.
I know how you do it. You bring it to the Switch. or something.
There's no coming back from that.